They say money can't buy happiness, but it can buy a wedding dress. Or at least, that's what I believed for 17 years. Until the day my mother proved that sometimes, money can buy betrayal instead. I stared at my bank account balance on that Monday morning, my coffee growing cold in my hand as the numbers on the screen refused to change no matter how many times I refreshed the page. $847.32. That was all that remained of my 17 years of sacrifice, of every birthday check saved, every overtime hour worked, every designer handbag I'd walked past without a second glance. My name is Abigail, and I'm 28 years old. I work as a software engineer at Morrison Tech in San Francisco, and until 3 months ago, I thought I understood how my family worked. I thought I knew my place in it, the responsible one, the one who never asked for anything, the one who'd been saving for her wedding since she was 11 years old. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start at the beginning, when dreams still felt achievable and family still felt like safety. I've been working since I was 14. Not because we were poor, but because I wanted things my parents couldn't or wouldn't provide. While my older brother Blake got a brand new Ford F-150 for his 25th birthday, I bought myself a 12-year-old Honda Civic with rust spots on the hood and a radio that only worked on Tuesdays. While Blake's college tuition was paid in full by our parents, I worked nights at a coffee shop in Haight-Ashbury and sold handmade jewelry at weekend markets to cover my expenses at UC Berkeley. The wedding fund started as a joke, really. I was 11, and my cousin had just gotten married in this fairy tale ceremony that probably cost more than my parents' house. I remember sitting at the reception, watching her glide across the dance floor in a dress that looked like spun moonlight, and thinking, someday, I want that. So I started saving, every dollar from babysitting the neighbors' kids, every 20 my grandmother slipped into my birthday cards, every bonus from every job I ever worked. By the time I graduated college, while my friends were backpacking through Europe or putting deposits on trendy apartments in Pacific Heights, I was living in a studio in Tenderloin where the walls were so thin I could hear my neighbor's alarm clock, but it was worth it. Every sacrifice, every declined invitation to expensive dinners, every time I walked instead of taking an Uber. Because by my 28th birthday, I had done it. $45,000. Enough for the wedding I'd been dreaming about since I was that starry-eyed 11-year-old. The account was at Wells Fargo, set up as a joint account with my mother as the co-signer because I'd been a minor when I opened it. I'd never thought to change it. Why would I? This was my mother. The woman who'd driven me to every job interview, who'd celebrated every promotion with me, who knew exactly how much this money meant to me. Blake, on the other hand, was 31 and had never held a job for more than 6 months. He dropped out of college after 2 years, burned through 3 failed business ventures funded by our parents, and was currently living in their basement while he figured things out. But he was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, the one whose potential was always just one more investment away from being realized. That Sunday dinner in early September started like any other. My boyfriend Ethan and I drove out to my parents' house in Walnut Creek, about an hour from the city. The same suburban street I'd grown up on, with its neat lawns and neighbors who still waved when you drove past. Mom had made pot roast, Dad was watching the game with the volume too loud, and Blake showed up 20 minutes late with a new revolutionary business idea. Food trucks, he announced, helping himself to the largest portion of meat. But not just any food truck. This is going to revolutionize street food in Oakland. I exchanged glances with Ethan, who squeezed my hand under the table. We'd heard this before. The app that was going to revolutionize shopping. The subscription service that was going to revolutionize meal prep. The cryptocurrency that was going to revolutionize finance. Revolution was Blake's favorite word, followed closely by investment opportunity. That sounds interesting, Dad said, which was his way of avoiding conflict. He'd learned long ago that questioning Blake's ideas only led to Mom defending them. It's more than interesting, Blake said, his eyes lighting up the way they always did when he was selling something. It's a gold mine. My buddy Marcus has the truck. I have the concept. We just need capital. 45 grand for a 50% stake. The number hit me like a physical blow. 45,000, the exact amount I'd saved. The exact amount Blake knew I had because he'd been there last month when I'd celebrated reaching my goal. That's a lot of money, Mom said. But I could see the familiar softness in her eyes. The look that meant she was already trying to figure out how to make it happen. The banks don't understand vision. Blake continued, and now he was looking directly at me. They see risk where they should see opportunity. But family understands family, right, Abigail? I felt Ethan's hand tighten on mine. I need to think about it, I said carefully. Blake's face shifted into an expression I knew too well. Hurt, disappointment, a touch of betrayal. Think about it? I'm your brother. I've never asked you for anything important before, and you need to think about it? Blake, Dad said weakly, but Mom was already leaning forward. He's right, honey, she said to me. Family supports family, and you're getting married when? You haven't even set a date yet. That's not the point. I started, but Blake was already pulling out his phone, showing us mock-ups of the truck, projections that promised a 20% return in 6 months. You'd actually make money, he said, enough for 2 dream weddings. The rest of dinner was tense. I kept saying I needed time. Blake kept pushing. Mom kept making pointed comments about how I'd always been careful with money, like it was a character flaw, and Dad kept his eyes on his plate. When we left, Mom walked us to the car. I'm not saying you have to do it, she said, which meant she absolutely was saying I had to do it. But Blake needs this chance, sweetheart. You're young, you have a good job, you can save the money again. I drove home in silence, Ethan's hand on my knee the whole way. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about that 11-year-old girl who'd started saving quarters in a piggy bank, who'd believed that if she worked hard enough, sacrificed enough, she could have her dream. Monday morning came too fast. I was in a meeting with the development team discussing the rollout of a new feature when my phone buzzed. A text from Mom. I transferred the money to Blake. You'll be so proud of your brother. I excused myself from the meeting, my hands shaking as I logged into my banking app. $847.32. 17 years of savings, gone in a single transfer I hadn't authorized. I called Mom immediately, standing in the parking lot of Morrison Tech, my voice cracking. Mom, you took my money? I didn't take anything, she said, her voice infuriatingly calm. I helped your brother. I knew you'd do the right thing eventually, so I just expedited the process. It's what's best for the family. Best for the family? I was crying now, not caring that people walking to their cars could see me. That was 17 years of my life. Don't be dramatic, Abigail. You make good money. You'll save it again. I hung up on her. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, sobbing, before I wiped my face and went back to work. Because that's what I do. I work. I save. I sacrifice. But as I sat at my desk, staring at spreadsheets that suddenly seemed meaningless, something shifted inside me. A cold clarity that cut through the grief and anger. They thought $45,000 was all I had. They thought that wedding fund was my only asset, my only proof that I was worth something. They were wrong. The next day, instead of calling Mom to scream or beg or try to get the money back, I made an appointment at First National Bank. Not the small Wells Fargo branch where I'd opened my wedding fund all those years ago, but the gleaming headquarters downtown where they handled real money. I'm interested in getting pre-approved for a mortgage, I told Jennifer, the loan officer with perfectly manicured nails and a smile that probably cost more than my car. She pulled up my information, and her eyebrows rose. Miss Chen, your credit score is exceptional, 847. I almost laughed at the number, the same as my checking account balance, but meaning something entirely different. You've been building credit for 11 years, she continued, scrolling through her screen. Perfect payment history, low utilization, diverse accounts, your income from Morrison Tech is very stable. Based on these factors, you qualify for a loan up to $2.2 million. I stared at her. $2.2 million? For a home purchase? Yes. Your debt-to-income ratio is essentially 0, and your employment history is impeccable. Frankly, Miss Chen, you're what we call a dream borrower. I left the bank with a pre-approval letter that felt like a weapon. $45,000. That's what they thought I was worth. That's what they thought was everything to me. I spent the rest of the week looking at houses with Ethan, who was still in shock that we could afford to buy in this market. We found it that Saturday, a Victorian in Walnut Creek, just 10 minutes from my parents' house. Original hardwood floors, crown molding, a kitchen with marble countertops, and a 6-burner range. The kind of house I'd driven past my whole life, assuming it would always be out of reach. $1.2 million. More money than Blake would see in his lifetime if his food truck projections were as accurate as his last 3 business plans. We put in an offer that night. Full asking price, 20% down. The sellers accepted immediately. The next Sunday dinner was electric, with tension from the moment we walked in. Blake was there, expansive and excited, talking about the food truck like he'd already made his first million. "The permits are taking longer than expected," he said, not meeting my eyes. "But that's just bureaucracy. We'll be operational by November, December at the latest." Mom beamed at him like he'd just cured cancer. Dad nodded along, asking the kind of vague questions that didn't require real answers. Nobody mentioned the money. Nobody asked how I was doing. Nobody noticed that I'd worn my grandmother's ring on my right hand, the one she'd left me that was worth more than Blake's truck. It wasn't until dessert that I casually mentioned, "Oh, Ethan and I are buying a house." The silence was beautiful. "A house?" Mom's voice was sharp. "Where? Some starter home in Daly City?" "Actually," I said, pulling up the photos on my phone, "it's here in Walnut Creek, on Maple Street, the Victorian with the blue shutters." Dad choked on his coffee. "The Hendrick place? That's over $1 million. 1.2, I confirmed, swiping through photos of the interior. "We close next month." Blake's fork clattered to his plate. "How is that possible? You gave me all your savings." And there it was, out in the open. The admission that he'd taken everything he thought I had. "I gave you my wedding fund," I corrected, "which, as Mom pointed out, I can save again since I'm young and have a good job." "But if you can afford $1 million house," Mom's face was red now, ugly with the realization of what she'd done, "why didn't you tell us you had money? Why didn't you ask before you took it?" The words hung in the air like an accusation. Which they were. "We thought," Mom sputtered. "Blake said it was all you had. That wedding fund." "And you believed him? You didn't think to verify with me before taking $45,000 out of my account?" "It wasn't taking." Blake slammed his hand on the table. "It was an investment. I'm going to pay you back with interest." I looked at him, really looked at him. 31 years old, still eating Mom's pot roast every Sunday, still convinced that the next scheme would be the one that worked. When the food truck revolutionizes street food? Like when your app revolutionized shopping? This is different. Is it, though? Ethan's hand found mine under the table, steady and sure. "We should go," he said quietly. "We're meeting the inspector at 8 tomorrow." We stood to leave, and Mom followed us out to the driveway. "Abigail, wait. We need to talk about this." "What's there to talk about? If you have millions of dollars..." "I don't have millions," I cut her off. "I have excellent credit and a stable income. The bank considers me a good investment. Unlike you, they actually evaluated my complete financial picture before making a decision about my money." She was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. "I was trying to help your brother. With my money, without my permission. I thought you'd understand. I thought you'd want to help family." I looked at her, this woman who'd driven me to job interviews and celebrated my promotions, and stolen from me without a second thought. "Helping family and being robbed by family are two different things, Mom. I would have understood if you'd asked. If you'd sat down with me and Blake and talked about the investment, the risks, the timeline for repayment. But you didn't think I deserved that courtesy, did you? Abigail? Did you even read his business plan? Did you look at the food truck market in Oakland? Did you check if he and Marcus have the proper licenses? Did you ask for references from their suppliers?" Her silence was answer enough. "You took $45,000 of my money and gave it to Blake based on nothing but his word and your belief that I owed it to him. And now you're upset because you've realized I'm not as financially vulnerable as you thought. That's not... I didn't mean..." "Yes, you did. You thought I'd have no choice but to accept it because what else could I do? You thought I'd cry for a few days and then go back to being good, responsible Abigail who never makes waves." I got in the car, then rolled down the window for one last thing. "Ask Blake about his repayment plan, Mom. Food trucks have a 60% failure rate in the first year. I hope his revolutionizes the industry, but I'm not holding my breath." The next morning, Blake called 17 times before I finally answered. We met at a Starbucks downtown, him looking haggard and desperate in a way I'd never seen before. "Abby, I swear I didn't know you had that kind of money. Would it have mattered if you did?" He had the grace to look ashamed. I needed this chance. You don't understand what it's like, watching you succeed at everything while I can't catch a break. I succeed because I work 60-hour weeks and live below my means. You can't catch a break because you're waiting for breaks instead of making them. That's not fair. Isn't it? I pulled out my phone, showing him my investment portfolio. Not the full amount, just enough to make my point. I started investing when I was 22. $50 a month, then $100, then more as my salary grew. Index funds, mostly, Nothing fancy, just consistent contributions and compound interest. His eyes widened at the numbers. How do you know all this? YouTube, books, free online courses, the same internet you use to design logos for businesses that never launch. He slumped in his chair. The truck, it's not going well. Marcus wants out already, says the permits are too expensive. I know. You know, I looked up your LLC. You filed it incorrectly. Your business address is listed as Mom and Dad's house, which violates Walnut Creek zoning laws for commercial enterprises. You'll get fined if anyone reports it. Can you help me fix it? I looked at this man who'd stolen $45,000 from me and was already asking for more help. My brother, who I loved despite everything. I'll email you the correct forms. The rest is up to you. Abby, I'm sorry, I'll pay you back, I swear. I've already written it off. If you pay me back, great. If not, that's fine too. But Blake, this is the last time. I won't be your safety net anymore. He nodded, tears in his eyes. I'm a terrible brother. No, you're a brother who never learned that love and money are two separate things. That boundary isn't cruelty, it's necessary. The house inspection went perfectly. Ethan and I spent our evenings planning renovations, picking out paint colors, dreaming about the life we'd build in those rooms. The wedding fund was gone, but what I'd gained in its place was worth so much more. My parents didn't come to the closing. They were invited, but Mom said it would be too painful to watch me sign papers for a house that represented their betrayal. I think she meant it would be too painful to face the evidence of how badly she'd misjudged me. Blake's food truck lasted 3 months. He called to tell me when they shut down, voice thick with shame. I didn't say I told you so. I didn't need to. He started sending me $50 a month, all he could afford from his new job at a restaurant supply company. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about him finally understanding that debts matter, that promises should be kept, that money has weight whether it's $50 or $50,000. Ethan proposed on Christmas Eve, in the living room of our Victorian house. The ring cost more than my entire wedding fund would have been. He'd been saving too, quietly, consistently, the way people do when they're building something real. I know you lost your wedding fund, he said as he slipped the ring on my finger. But you gained so much more. You gained freedom from guilt. You gained the knowledge of your own worth. You gained a house and a future and a family that finally understands boundaries. He was right. The wedding fund had been a dream deferred. 17 years of saying no to myself so I could say yes to one perfect day. But losing it had taught me something more valuable. The difference between being generous and being taken advantage of. The difference between helping family and enabling them. The difference between sacrifice and self-destruction. We got married the following September, in the backyard of our Victorian house. Mom cried through the entire ceremony, though I'm not sure if they were tears of joy or regret. Blake was there, 15 pounds lighter from working in a kitchen instead of dreaming in a basement, hands rough from actual labor. He'd paid back $3,000 by then, and when he handed me a check for another $500 as a wedding gift, I hugged him and meant it. Dad walked me down the aisle, and for the first time in my life, I saw him clearly. Not weak, just conflict avoidant. Not cruel, just passive. He'd let Mom take my money because standing up to her was harder than letting me suffer. But he was there, walking me toward Ethan, and that had to count for something. I'm proud of you, he whispered as we reached the altar. For all of it. The reception was everything 11-year-old me had dreamed of and more. Not because of the flowers or the band or the dress that cost more than a car, but because I'd paid for every bit of it myself. With money earned from work, saved with discipline, invested with intelligence. Money that no one could take from me because I'd learned to protect what was mine. As the sun set over Walnut Creek, painting our house in shades of gold and pink, I stood with Ethan on the porch we'd refinished ourselves. Our guests danced on the lawn we'd landscaped, ate food we'd chosen and paid for, celebrated a love that had survived betrayal and come out stronger. Do you regret it? Ethan asked. The wedding fund? I thought about it, really thought about it. $45,000, 17 years of savings. The trust I'd placed in family who didn't deserve it. The pain of betrayal, the anger of realization, the long journey to forgiveness. No, I said finally. It was an expensive lesson, but it was worth learning. Money comes and goes, but knowing your worth, that's priceless. He kissed me then, my husband, in front of the house we'd bought with credit I'd built and dreams I'd refused to let die. Behind us, Blake was teaching Dad how to use Venmo to split the bar tab. Mom was cornering the photographer, probably telling him about how her daughter had bought this $1 million house all by herself. And me? I was exactly where I'd always planned to be, just not how I'd planned to get there. The path had been harder, the cost higher than I'd imagined. But I'd learned something that $45,000 couldn't have bought. The power of saying no, the strength in setting boundaries, the freedom that comes from knowing you can take care of yourself. The wedding fund was gone. But in its place was something better. A life built on truth, boundaries strong enough to protect love, and the knowledge that I was worth more than any amount of money in any account. And that was worth every penny I'd lost and every tear I'd shed to find it.